Hi, I'm your host, Laura Nichols, and this is a note from your coach, from me, Queen of the Pivot, to you, badass human. This show is designed as a quick dose of unfiltered motivation to empower you to create the life you want to be living, one of authenticity and alignment. It investigates the power of the pivot and helps create understanding of the human journey, all while sharing tales of pivots from my sometimes ridiculous human experience, as well as my 20 years of experience in working with other humans on growth and change. If you are interested in leveling up your life, stay tuned. A note from your coach starts now. My loves, I am Laura Nichols, and you are listening to Notes from Your Coach on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with me for the next hour and let me help you ignite your life with unfiltered motivation. Each first and third Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern Standard, I will be discussing some small but potent nuggets of truth from my book, Notes from Your Coach, to help you create the life you want to be living. So I am so excited about this episode today. This is episode number 4. And it's a really, really special one because it is my first episode with a guest. It's not just any guest, right? We have Wendy Muzzy, and I'm going to give you, her professional bio, but then I'm going to tell you a little bit about who she is in my life. So Wendy is a money mindset expert who teaches women how to transform their relationship with money so they can create, build, and sustain wealth. With a lighthearted, positive approach rooted in acceptance and non-judgment, clients receive the support they need to break free from money worries and find their money mojo. The best part is they navigate their financial journeys with clarity, confidence, and purpose. They create a ripple effect that transforms not only their finances, but other areas of their lives as well, uplifting and inspiring others along the way. So I know this to be true for multiple reasons because I have actually worked with Wendy as a money mindset coach, and we also do peer coaching. So Wendy and I went through a coaching program together, and over the last 2 years, I would say she's probably one of the people who knows my life, probably the best, one of the people who knows my life the best in its current state, and has sort of gone through this major journey of even just my business, becoming a coach, and all the things that have come with it through the last couple of years. So it just seems fitting that she would be my first guest here on the podcast and the show. And as I wanted to do, as I was envisioning the show, my idea was that the guests who came on would pick a quote for the show that really spoke to them. And so when Wendy was looking through the book and she got back to me with her quote, it kind of made me giggle because I thought, of course, if I had to pick a quote for Wendy, this is probably the one I also would have picked for her because in our work together, we spent a lot of time talking about this. So the quote this week that we're going to be talking about from the book Notes from Your Coach is, "Curiosity is the unsung hero in personal development. Feeling shame, anger, or judgment, get curious about it." So let's buckle up because today we're diving in and we're going to be talking about curiosity. And curiosity really doesn't get enough credit. I'm not talking about curiosity of what's over your neighbor's fence, right, in their yard. I'm talking about curiosity that is going to flip your personal development game. Growth, mindset, empowerment, those are all words we hear a lot. But we don't actually talk enough about curiosity. It's really the driving force behind all of it. If you're feeling stuck in life and you're not getting curious about it, you're just getting frustrated. So I would love to know, Wendy, thank you so much for coming on. I would love to know, welcome, and also talk to me about this quote. Why did you pick it? Like, where are we going with this?
Curiosity, I think, is one of those keys that makes life just worth living. I love curiosity. It's something that I've always had. I've always embodied in my life, but it's also just so much of the work that we do. I help women uncover their money stories, and we really have to get to a place of curiosity rather than judgment to help them figure out what are these stories they're telling themselves underneath the surface. I kind of think the opposite of curiosity is judgment. So I'm going to put those on the scales as we talk through this conversation a little bit. I've also come up with a course, which I think we'll talk about later, but one of the key mindset habits I think we need is curiosity. I call it Get Curious, Stay Curious. So I just love it. I love it. I love it. It's like the reason why I'm alive is to be curious. And I hope other people walk away with that same perspective at the end of this conversation, wherever it goes.
Yeah, I love that. And you know what's really interesting? Just to toot your horn a little bit, Wendy, I was actually just having a money conversation with a partner yesterday, and we were talking about sort of historically, like where money mindset comes from without even realizing it, sort of all the things that you have taken me through at some point and realizing things about my money mindset that I didn't realize were sort of, I'll say, gifted to me,
Love it.
when we're
Love
sort
it.
of given a subconscious like thought about money, just from the way you grow up, the way it's presented to you, and even just what society tells us. And I referenced curiosity in my conversation with my partner. Just the idea of not having judgment for my own money story, but being curious about where it came from, and then also being curious about how I can change it. And so I love the idea that curiosity and judgment are sort of like, I don't know, like I don't in my mind sort of battling it out for like who's going to be the winner, but I'd love to break that down a little bit more. What is it about I love to say that curiosity can't or judgment can't really be present if you're being curious. Like they're very different energies. When you're sitting in curiosity, judgment is not really an energy that you can sit in. And that sounds sort of like what you're saying when you're talking about them being at odds with each other. So I'd love to get a little bit more of your take on that.
So I think there's a lot of truth to that. Like if we're staying in judgment about ourselves and our behaviors, others and their behaviors, whatever it may be, external or internal, judgment is okay. It's what's there. But if you can take that away and really say, what is going on here? What's a little bit deeper? What's below the surface? You can really see tremendous growth and openness and expansion in your lives, which part of money mindset is expansion, that abundance idea, this idea that there's plenty for everybody. It's not just a selected for a reserved few. And it allows us to kind of look at the possibilities rather than the limitations. So I think that's kind of what I think of them being at odds is you can't have scarcity and abundance. And I don't believe you can have judgment and curiosity in the same space. Like you have to kind of look at it however you want to look at it, but kind of look at those opportunities and the possibilities.
I Oh my gosh, okay. Can we rewind for a second? Because you just brought up something that I don't think I've ever thought of before, and it's blowing my mind. So the idea that curiosity opens up to opportunities where judgment just creates limitations. Holy cow. Okay, everyone, I just need to make sure that everyone got that, right? So curiosity opens us up to the bigger thing, right? To opportunities, to what could be, what's behind it, what's beneath, what's bigger. And judgment just limits us. And if that is not enough for you to turn this podcast off and be like, okay, I got what I needed, because come on, like that is a huge thought. I mean, that's mind blowing to me. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I agree 100%. And that's the key to it is we all want opportunities. At the end of the day, if we ask 100 people on the street, 99 of them want opportunities. They don't want to just see what isn't there. They want to see what's possibly there. And I think if we can just like curiosity, just open the door just a smidge. We don't have to open the door fully, just a smidge and kind of just wonder and kind of be curious. We can see some really amazing things, not only in ourselves, but all the people around us. It's beautiful. Let's all be curious.
Yeah. Yeah. Curiosity allows you to kind of sit in the energy of, oh, this is interesting. Like, where is this coming from? Right? Like, there's more to this story. Like, it allows you to see below the surface of something, right? Like, you might have a reaction from somebody, and that emotion is very valid. But my guess is there's probably something a little bit behind it. And being curious allows you to say, either for yourself, like, why am I reacting this way? Or why are they reacting this way? Right. And it allows you not to just allow life to happen, but you're really starting to take an active role in understanding things rather than just like letting things happen to you.
And that's what I hear you saying. Like it allows you to engage in your life rather than just passively just being a participant in it. And that's huge as well.
So I'm curious in your work, um, I'm wondering if there is a time, I'm sure there's plenty. You could even use me as an example if you want to, where getting curious in with one of your clients has been a game changer for them?
That's a really good question. Most people come to me with a limitation. They don't realize that I can't save. I'm not generous enough. There's a lot of what they don't have. And rather than focusing solely on that, we kind of flip the script of what do you have? So saving might be a difficult nature. We'll get curious in their story. We'll uncover that they got a dollar allowance in their childhood, and that's what's limiting them from the potential of saving today, whatever it may be. But it allows us to kind of see what could be rather than what is or what they determine their fact to be. Again, going back to their money story, going back to their beliefs, and going back to that fundamental script that we have playing in our background. And so I think I think all of my clients so far have had something that was lacking in their lives. And we just had to kind of open that door to curiosity and see what was there and see what could be there. And it changes everything. I mean, I've had people like, holy cow, I had it, I had to spend it. Now I realize I can actually build up my emergency fund. I don't have to just spend it because it's there. I can have a different possibility in my life. And it's life-changing. It's amazing.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And it's interesting because it sounds to me a little bit of what we are describing as somewhat what we call limiting beliefs, where we have this idea about something and it almost sounds like truth, right? We have ourselves convinced that it is an actual truth, like I can't save money or I have to spend money or I can't move any higher in my career or I'm never going to be happy in my marriage, right? Like whatever it is, we have this idea and it almost is so ingrained in us that we take it as truth. And it sounds like what you're saying is that curiosity allows us to take these, see them for the belief that they are, not the fact, which is actually what a limiting belief is. It's a belief that we have that keeps us where we are rather than an actual fact. And so it does turn things on its head and open things up.
Definitely. But there's also empowering beliefs. So we have a bajillion beliefs in a day. We believe that everyone should stop at a red light. I mean, whatever it may be, we can go through and understand these are kind of the rules that we see the world through. But again, until we can bring them to the surface, we don't know which ones are maladaptive and helping us. Like some of them are hurting us, some of them are helping us. And it's bringing them to the surface. I kind of see it as like a submarine, like and then you get it to the earth, get up to the water surface, and then you get to decide which ones are going to help you and which ones aren't. And curiosity is the key that brings them to the surface.
I love that so much. This ties into the last episode I did where we talked a lot about contentment and the idea that we're chasing external validation a lot of times instead of looking internally. And so when you start to use curiosity to say like, wait a minute, like, why am I putting so much pressure on myself to achieve X, Y, and Z? Or what do I actually want here? Right? The curiosity is really what interrupts the cycle of chasing this external milestone that you set for yourself or this limiting belief, and then allows you to step into what you're talking about, which is the empowering belief of everything that could be if you wanted to, right? And there's no pressure. You get to make the decision to become a saver. You get to make the decision to be happy in your marriage. You get to make these decisions, but being curious about it is really what allows you to have that super powerful shift in things.
I have a thousand thoughts, but I'm going to hold them. Let people be curious to what they are the next segment.
Sounds perfect. So we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Notes from Your Coach with Laura Nichols and my beautiful guest, Wendy Muzzy. And we're going to be back and we're going to explore more about this idea of curiosity and what it means and why it is such a game changer for really the personal development game. See you in a couple minutes. All right, we are back on Notes from Your Coach with Laura Nichols, also known as Queen of the Pivot. And today we're going to be talking about curiosity, what it looks like, how it ups your personal development game. But before we continue, I really want to make sure that everyone knows how to contact you, Wendy. So if our listeners are interested in knowing more about everything awesome that you do, how can they connect with you?
I offer one-on-one coaching. If people want to find out about that, they can go to wendymuzzycoaching.com. But more importantly, I'm starting a course launching in exactly 15 days. Get ready, world. It's coming out there. That's super exciting. It's Find Your Money Mojo, Master the Habits to Overcome Your Fear of Worry or your fear of money. Um, and they can find me at findyourmoneymojo.com. That is exactly how it sounds, findyourmoneymojo.com. It'll take you to a quiz. At the end, you can find out more about the course, or if you want to work one-on-one with me, that's it. It's a really quick quiz. I'd like to say that like less than 2 minutes, 7 questions. You get some results at the end, some strategies to help you wherever you are. And then you can find out more about how to work with me.
Super worth taking it. I just want to say because I still practice stepping into my, not to give anything away, but magician energy all the time. So go to the website and all of that information will also be in the show notes. So check it out. In this next segment, we are going to talk about sort of the downside of the not so pretty side of emotions, right? So we have a couple not fun emotions that we're going to talk about. One is shame, right? Of our reactions to shame, often it's something that we're going to suppress, we're going to avoid, or we might overreact to it, right? And that's all human nature. It's all normal. Shame comes knocking. If we don't get curious, we kind of shove it under the rug. That's the suppression part. Um, Anger is another one that comes up, and we can unleash it from the nearest bystander, or we bottle up and then unleash it later, right? And there's also judgment, which is sort of what we talked about earlier, which is it's a sneaky one. Sometimes it comes without us realizing it. And again, we either silently tear ourselves up or not so silently or silently tear other people up. Does that all sound familiar, right? So when we talk about these emotions, we either suppress them, right? That's when you feel it in the pit of your stomach, the heat in your cheeks, and think, nope, not today, not going to deal with it. But the problem is when we suppress it, they don't disappear, right? Our body keeps score, as the famous book talks about. And so they sit in the back of your in the back of your mind or in your stomach, or if you do yoga like me, you notice they sit in your hips, right? And then there's the avoidance, right? You throw it under the rug. It's like I'm gonna binge watch a TV show or dive into work or eat these cookies instead of dealing with the actual emotion, right? And then in the end, it all comes out when you overreact because you haven't dealt with the emotions in the first place. So, Wendy, I'm curious what your take is with these different ways of reacting to these not so fun emotions. Do you see it in your work, and what does that look like?
That's a really good question. I think so often, let me rephrase that. Sometimes we don't even know that we're suppressing the emotion. You talked about the redness in your cheeks or the pit in your stomach. We're not even aware that that's there. So I think the first tip is we've got to kind of connect that feeling or connect that emotion to something, and we've got to name it. We've got to say, oh, wow, I had this yesterday. I've got a pit in my stomach. What is going on? And so curiosity has to be that first step that comes in there. It's not, why am I feeling this way? It's what is going on? And kind of stay in that space of just curiosity. I have a coach myself yesterday, had a session, said, hey, I've got this pit in my stomach. Can we spend some time just exploring this? So we spent some time, we went through it. At the end, turned out I just needed some rest. What's going on? Where is this coming from? Why is this I do, why is this happening? So I do interject a why question there. And then what can I do about it? I slept 12 of the last 24 hours. I feel like $1,000,000. Had no clue that this pit was there because I was just feeling something, whatever was going on, and I needed to get some rest. I'll be honest, I've got a lot going on with the course. I was kind of in the weeds on that. I was had my blinders on. And through my conversation with my coach, I realized I just needed to take a rest, close the computer, not focus on it for a little bit, not avoid it, but just not focus on it, get some sleep. And I could come through today with a whole new perspective. But it all started with what's going on? Checking in. Hey, Wendy, what are you feeling? What is this?
Yeah, and it's interesting because you said curiosity is the first step. I'm going to argue with you for a second because actually what you did was that you even had the awareness that you had a feeling in your stomach, that there was something a little off, right? And so being able to be aware enough of your body telling you that there was something that wasn't really feeling quite right was almost like, I'll say, let's do this. We'll say 1A, 1B, right? So step 1A is like the noticing, and then 1B is the getting curious about it. Like, oh, that's interesting. Like there's something going on in my stomach. Like, what is that? But it's all they're all part of the same step, really, if you think about it. But I love that awareness was really the first piece of noticing that something was off and then being able to be curious about it so that like you're not just letting it continue without questioning it. Like you're like, oh, something's wrong. My body's telling me something, but I'm just going to keep focused on this course and get in the weeds more. And then it's just going to turn into, suppression is going to turn into avoidance and it's going to turn into overreacting later when really you just needed to sleep. You just needed some rest.
My brain is like, please, can we just take a break just for a minute? And that is so true. I do want to acknowledge it is step one and step 1B, but I'm going to even say step one and step two is acknowledge. I had to at least be aware of it. So you're completely correct. But after I was aware of it, I had to be in that state of curiosity. And interestingly, I ate something at first. And I was like, I feel better, huh? And so normally I would have been like, oh, I felt better after I ate. That's what the solution is. But I really had to get curious even deeper because eating wasn't the solution. It just felt better temporarily. It was really what I needed was some good old flesh and shut eye. And that's often we just don't give ourselves that space to kind of be curious and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, and the other thing that I love about curiosity when it comes to dealing with negative emotions is that it's really like a neutralizer, right? So when you get curious about something, it allows you a pause. It allows you a space between yourself and the emotion. Instead of being in the emotion, you're just observing it. So you're not like a prisoner to your feelings, right? Instead of saying like I'm still mad right now, you're saying, "Oh, this is interesting. Like I can feel some anger bubbling up. Like what is this about?" You could say, "Why am I mad?" as long as that's not creating a bunch of judgment for you. You know, is this anger about what I think it's about, or is it something else? Right. And so then you're creating an idea that you're understanding yourself instead of judging yourself. So when you approach your emotions with curiosity, you're not judging yourself for feeling them. Like you didn't say, "Oh my gosh, there's a pit in my stomach. Like I'm so judgmental of it." No, you're just like interested. Like, what is this? And you don't have shame about it. So instead of spiraling, you're just stepping into curiosity. Instead of snapping when you're angry, you can say, "Oh, I'm feeling myself getting angry. Like, what is this?" Typically, most of the time, in my opinion, it's typically not anger. It's like hurt or fear, right? That becomes anger. Like, so what's really going on? And so I think once we allow ourselves to get curious, it takes a little bit of the sting out of these big emotions that people like do whatever they can not to feel, right? Because they're not fun to feel. No one wants to feel these ways. But if you get curious, it really sort of neutralizes that sting. And I'm curious if that's what you have noticed too in your work as well.
That's what clients have told me, but especially I want to talk a little bit more about my own experience because it was interesting. I got into my 40s. I didn't know how to feel my feelings. Like I'm like, someone should have taught me this well before 40, how to feel my feelings. But as soon as you start to actually do the work and stay in that space of feeling your feelings, curiosity, letting curiosity kind of drive that possibility and where you're going, but also honoring those feelings, they're so much smaller they're so much less dramatic. Let me use that word than we thought they were. It's okay, friend, if you're angry. It's okay, friend, if you've got some shame. We all have shame. Welcome to the shame party. Like this is okay. And you can kind of have that loving embrace of ourselves and also of our neighbors. And it's so important. I don't remember what your initial question was, but I'm going to say feel your feelings, friends.
I know, I love it. And I love that I think it's really important to normalize the idea that for some reason, a lot of us didn't really get taught how to feel or what to do when these emotions come up. My job before this was school counselor, and that was a lot of the work we did was trying to teach students how to feel feelings. And it's really interesting because in the world of academia, there's not a lot of room for it, right? Like we talk a lot of talk about it, but at least in the United States, we don't really leave room to teach this. And then you have a lot of pushback from parents who say things like, well, that's my job at home. Great, but it's not happening, right? Like we're not teaching kids how to feel. And so I still work with teenagers and adults, but even now, that's when I start with my clients, one of the first things typically, I would say 99% of the time, my clients, the first thing we do is start to talk about what it even looks like to feel, like how to even step into a place where you can feel and notice what different feelings feel like in your body so you can identify them. Even adults in their 40s, I'm getting out that feelings wheel where like you can like pick, oh, this is actually how I'm feeling because so often a lot of our vocabulary around feelings, even into our 40s or 50s or 60s, is I feel good or I feel bad, right?
Yeah.
But feelings are so much more nuanced than that. And so I love that point. I think that's a really important point. And I think the other piece to sort of lean into here is that this is like a long-term thing, right? Like this is not a short-term quick fix. It's why I work with my clients for at least 12 weeks, right? Because when you're leaning into something like curiosity, it's not a one-time fix. It's a long-term tool that you're going to use for your emotional health. Like you and I have been on this path for years now, right? And
Yes.
do I still learn new stuff every day? Heck yeah. But right? Like, but it's a long curiosity, leading into the energy of curiosity is it's not a band-aid, right? It's a blueprint for personal growth in general. And so it takes practice. And so before we get to our next break, I just want to invite my listeners to think about a time when maybe their emotion was a little bit bigger than they wish it had been. Um, and it didn't really match the situation. And I want you to think about and ask yourself the question, how could curiosity have changed my reaction in that moment? Right? Instead of reacting automatically, what would have happened if you had paused and said, what am I really feeling here and why? Okay, so I'm gonna give you time to think about that, and we're gonna take a little break. So I am Laura Nichols, listening to Notes from Your Coach. When we come back, we're gonna talk more about curiosity and really how to embed it into your life and what that looks like. Stay tuned, and we will be right back. All right, we are back on Notes from Your Coach with Laura Nichols, also known as the Queen of the Pivot. We are talking about the quote, that curiosity is the unsung hero in personal development. Feeling shame, anger, or judgment, get curious about it. That's from the book Notes from Your Coach, and it's the quote that Wendy so lovingly picked to talk about today, and I am loving it. We have Wendy Muzzy here talking about curiosity and how it benefits us as well as our clients. And we're going to talk about the practical tools and mindset shifts when it comes to getting curious and what that looks like. So we've all been there, right? We're in the middle of a heated conversation where something triggers you and boom, like your emotions all of a sudden just take over. They were there, you didn't notice it, so they just sort of take over. So the question is, we say or do something that maybe we regret later. So the idea is, what if we could introduce a pause or get curious about it before we react? And I love to say that that pause is where like the beautiful magic happens, right? And so it's kind of a two-step process. One is to be able to catch yourself in the moment. And this is where we were talking earlier about it's less about catching yourself, more about being aware of what your body is telling you, maybe what your emotions are, right? Like where are you feeling the thing in your body? Like, what is your stomach telling you? What is your face telling you? We're not talking about, by the way, a 10-second pause, right? Like, the more you practice this, the easier it gets. And then the second step is like asking yourself a question. And this is where the curiosity comes in. You've created the pause, right? So you haven't reacted, you're just noticing a feeling. And then you get to say, like, interesting. Like, I always start my dialogue with myself as interesting. I don't know if I'm the only person that does that, but I would like to say, oh, that's interesting, Laura. What's underneath this emotion? What am I actually feeling here? Where is this coming from? And that's what shifts the like energy from judgment, shame, whatever, to curiosity. And I know that you have some thoughts on this. Wendy, because we've talked about this before. And what I like to say is that mindfulness and curiosity really are sort of like best friends in this scenario, right? There's a beautiful synergy between mindfulness and between curiosity. And I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about what that synergy is. I know you have a beautiful acronym that you like to share, and tell us a little bit more about that.
Definitely. I mean, I think mindfulness is just staying present in the moment. Let's make sure we define it and know that what we're all talking about here. My husband is a fabulous yoga instructor, and he keeps me mindful day in and day out.
We love Sean Muzzy. Shout out.
He's amazing. I would totally probably spin up all the time if it wasn't for him in my life. So he keeps me grounded and keeps me mindful. So I have an external reminder of my mindfulness daily. But it's also important to note that mindfulness is not it's not just doing yoga and it's not just breath exercise. I think those are important, but it's actually checking in with ourselves. I've even set a reminder on my phone sometimes to say every hour, what am I feeling right now? Whenever I was first learning how to feel my emotions, I totally did that. So no, people, if that's your problem, you're in good company here. So my 3 C's is what I teach my clients. It's called catch it, challenge it, change it. Now, catch it is that moment in that heated moment where we're feeling something. It could be your nails in your palm if you're feeling angry. It could be not wanting to be seen, being like hiding if you're feeling shame, or it could be, oh my goodness, like what is going on right here? This is just completely inappropriate. If it's judgment, it can be whatever your signals are, but you have a signal to help you catch whatever's that thought or whatever that belief is that's gotten ignited. The next thing is to challenge it. Again, that's where curiosity comes in. And it's those questions that we ask ourselves. Is this benefiting me? That's generally my first thing. Is this thought right now that I'm having benefiting me? My next thing is this true? Sometimes we have thoughts that are they feel true, but they're not true. And then also, is this connected to other experiences that I've had? As I'm challenging thoughts, that's kind of what the whole system is. And finally, what do I need right now? What is it right now that I need? And then I get to decide on the back end, or we get to decide on the back end if we want to change that thought. Um, it takes a lot of mindfulness to kind of be in that space. It may be an alarm on your phone to remind yourself every hour to check in, but it through practice and through repetition, it becomes natural. It becomes part of our day-to-day activities. And then we can actually catch it in real time when our face is red, or when we are feeling whatever it is that we're feeling in our body. We can actually make cognitive decisions then to change those automatic thoughts that happen. So that's what I do, are the 3 C's. Catch it, challenge it, change it.
I like it. I like it. And I also love how you point out what mindfulness is. And it's important definitely to make sure, sometimes we get caught in like coach speak and, where we're talking and we know what we're talking about, but it's easy to forget that we need to make sure that we're like explaining to the listeners exactly what we're talking about. And I also am a yoga practitioner, so I get thrown into that as well. It's easy for me to get into yoga speak as well. So I think it is important to flesh out mindfulness a little bit, and what that actually means, because it really is. I want it to present it sort of as a foundation for everything else, because a lot of times when a big emotion hits us, we're not actually here. And when I say here, what I mean is we're in our brains. We're not in a state where we're able to really observe what's going on around us. And so being mindful is that kind of state that you can sit in as a foundation for you to be able to be present and observe. And so in the next segment, we're going to get to talking about how to do that. But I do want to flesh out why mindfulness is so helpful. So when we're talking about staying mindful and being able to be present so that we can observe what's actually happening, instead of in our mind arguing with ourselves, or, that thing we do where we argue with somebody else in our head. Like
Oh,
it's a conversation. It's a conversation we've already had, but for some reason we're either reliving it or we're like completely taking it a different direction, right? That is not being mindful, right? Our head is sort of kind of going running down this rabbit hole. And the idea of mindfulness and using curiosity with mindfulness is what allows us to stay sort of present and investigate, use our investigative muscles and look at things rather than judgment or shame that comes from the back end of all of that. So, with that said, again, mindfulness is sort of one of those big, I don't know, the words that gets used thrown around a lot. And so for those of us who maybe don't know or are beginners in this, right? And trying to figure out what that even means, what are some strategies that you would recommend or some tools that you would recommend for becoming mindful or practicing mindfulness? And I have some too that I can share on the back end, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on this first.
I think it's often just checking in with ourselves. So I think it always starts with checking in ourselves. You and I have had extensive conversations. I have a gift, and I use air quotes for people who are hearing and not seeing, but I have a gift of knowing what's happening in my body. I very much am in tune to the feelings in my body, and I'm very grateful for that gift. But if I didn't have it, I think I would just have to say, dig a little deeper. What is going on a little bit deeper here? Um, I think one of the shortcuts to master that gift, though, is meditation and sitting in silence. I'm going to tell you very simply what I think meditation is. It's not like sitting on your pillow and crossing your legs and incense burning and all those things. It can definitely be that if that's what you want. No space for any other opinions, but it's just checking in with yourself and noticing from a bird's eye view what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. I think that's probably one of the reasons why it's easier for me to know what I'm feeling pretty quickly is my brain, that's my default. It automatically goes to a 1,000-foot view. Where are you feeling this? What's happening? And it's almost as if like I'm just checking in on a friend. Hey, what's happening? So one of my number one strategies I would tell anyone and everyone is get a mindful practice if you can. Now, I've heard everyone say, I can't do or get a meditation practice if you can. I've heard people say they can't meditate. I hear you. I was there 10 years ago. I fully agreed with you. I can't meditate. My brain thinks too much. It does too much. There are plenty of apps out there that can help you if you just want to start getting started, but try to find a way just to sit in silence for 5 minutes and just see what's going on in your body. As those thoughts come across, I see them as little buses, and I can decide I'm sitting at the bus stop. The thoughts are coming through. The buses are flying by. I can decide to get on any one of those buses if I want, but instead I want to stay at that bus stop and just watch them go by and not hold judgment. Just let them just be wherever they are. That's my number one strategy for figuring out all of the things is meditation regularly, daily.
Yeah, yeah, and girl, I love a good meditation, and I want to just again make sure that our listeners know that this is something that you've practiced. Like this is not something that you being able to sit at a bird's eye view and observe what's going on is not something that you just woke up and were born able to do necessarily. Like for a lot of people who use that tool now, that takes practice to do. And so just like going to the gym, lifting weights, meditation and mindfulness are muscles that you build in the same way. One thing that I love to do with my clients is a brain dump where they just sit and write everything that their brain is saying at one time, right? They just I saw, yeah, they just
Yes.
sit and they just put it all on paper and they stay curious. There's no judgment. Anything that comes up is fair game. You just throw it all out there. And in a sense, it's kind of like taking a Lego bin and like dumping it over, right? And so that it's all there on the floor and you can be like, oh, okay, I didn't even know this was in here, right? And then you get to take a look at a look at what has come up for you. And then you can start asking yourself questions about it, right? Like, what am I feeling? Like, what is surprising me about what's coming up? Or what did I know was already there? What do I want to put back in the Lego bin? What do I want to like put away and not put back in the Lego bin? Right. Another strategy that is really helpful at the beginning, if you're struggling with learning how to meditate, is breathing, right? Like that is one thing I love about yoga so much is they often talk about going back to your breath. In fact, just this morning in my yoga class, my teacher was like, listen, if you lay here on your back and focus on your breathing for the entire class, that is yoga, right? Because that is mindfulness. If you just focus, if you give your brain a job that is breath in, breath out over and over again, right? You automatically will shift into being mindful rather than in your brain. And that is the idea, right? Is to allow yourself to be in a state of observation rather than judgment, shame, etc. when we're talking about these things. And then there's also the 10-second rule, right? If you can pause for 10 seconds when something comes up that's starting to make you feel something, that 10 seconds will shift you into mindfulness, right? So that you're not straight to reacting. So we've given you several strategies here. There's a lot of apps that come with meditation, focusing on breathing, coming up with a brain dump or some sort of journal prompting, which side note, the next notes from your coach is coming out, and there will be a journal aspect to it with this notes from your coach. So that is something that you can look at going into. But at the very least, practicing a curiosity pause. That's what we'll call it, that 10-second pause, where instead of reacting, you take a deep breath and you count to 10 and you say, okay, what's going on here? First, what's this emotion? Second, what's going on here? Right. And so I want you to think back to that same scenario that I had you think about before and think, how would it be different if I had taken a curiosity pause, if I had taken 10 seconds to breathe and ask yourself these questions, right? And then you can take the time to jot it down in your journal. What did you learn, or what do you think about what happened? Or some people don't want to write, so just get out your phone, record your thoughts on a recorder, right? You can do it verbally as well. But this is something that I want you to practice in the next week. So try it out, listeners. I'd love to hear if it works for you, and we can give more tips like this. We're going to take another break. But before we do, I just wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about your course that you have coming up and what that looks like.
Awesome. Yes. Course coming up next month. I'm super excited. It's helping you identify your money beliefs. That's how we start off. We do have a section on feeling your feelings because we all need to feel our feelings, especially around money. And then we go into the 4 key mindset habits, which are let the gratitude flow, get curious, stay curious, know where you're heading, and make mindful money moves. And then we wrap it up with giving you the ways to incorporate those habits in your daily life so you can truly embrace proactive abundance, because that's the goal. Proactive abundance, we all have it in us. We just have to kind of have those habits to make it forefront.
Is this something that people will have once they buy the course, they'll always have access to it?
We'll always have access to it. It will be I do want to throw this out here. It'll be the lowest price at the end of this year that'll be. Not that I want to create scarcity or urgency. People can do whatever they want to do, but it will be the lowest this last 2 months. And then next year we'll go into full pricing.
Love it. And I love that because, again, everything is practice, right? Like we still practice meditating. We still practice observing our feelings. And it's no different with money mindset. As your life changes and comes and goes, that's still going to be a practice. So I can't wait to see the course. I'm so long for this ride. We're going to take our last break. And then when we get back to the show, we're going to talk about the nitty gritty, the real work, the how we do it, how we use it in our own life, and how we've, pitfalls that we may have encountered, but just to help our listeners out. So we will be right back. All right, we are back again on Notes from Your Coach, and we have talked about why curiosity is such a game changer. But let's get real for a second. How does it actually play out when you're in the thick of it, when your emotions are running high, and curiosity feels like really the last thing on your mind, right? So both Wendy's already shared some moments, and I have a million where curiosity wasn't just a nice idea, but it really did flip the script in an emotional situation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. This happens a lot with my kids, and I'm sure I'm not the only mom out there who can relate to this, but my kids are, bless them, I love them so much. They really have a knack for being able to push my buttons, right? And the more that been able to use the power of curiosity and then the pause that I get from that curiosity, the more that I've been able to keep my reactions to them at bay. So to be really honest, my 16-year-old has been an impetus very much for this curiosity because he has been one where he'll be like, whoa, well, he doesn't say this nicely. I'll say, like, in my words, it would be like, hey, mom, what's going on? He would be like, what's up, mom? Like, why you all acting like that, bro? Right? But it does give me enough awareness for me to be like, huh, am I reacting appropriately here? Or is there something else going on? And more times than not, he's dead on. And it's really something else that's sort of pushing me over the edge. So just the other day, typical scenario in my house, I asked my 13-year-old to do the dishes, right? Um, and it's no different than anything else. Get your laundry, pick up your clothes, have you done your homework, etc. And I got the just a minute right now. If I'm like other moms, which I'm gonna assume I'm not totally abnormal, that just a minute sometimes throws me over the edge, right? Like, because that just a minute makes me think like, well, how many times am I gonna have to ask you to do this, right? But in this scenario, I actually heard the voice of my 16-year-old in my head going like, what's going on here, mom? Like, what's the reaction here? And so I asked myself when I could feel my frustration coming up, okay, what's actually going on here? And when I sat to think about it, now this is all happening in like nanoseconds, by the way. The story is taking way longer than what actually happened. What I realized is, as a single mom, I have a lot on my plate, right? And to get past the overwhelm, a lot of things that I do is to delegate, right? And so when I hear just a minute, I can't just tick the box and assume it's going to be done, which is what I really want to do. Like, I really want to be able to say, like, okay, I've handed that off. The dishes are going to get done. So when I hear just a minute, it makes me realize, dang, like that's sitting on my mental load list until it's actually done. And I'm going to have to do another reminder. And so what I realize is really it's overwhelmed that I'm feeling, and that's causing the frustration. And so when I realize that, it gives me both my self-compassion and my 13-year-old, because I also am an expert in child development, and I recognize that that just a minute is actually pretty appropriate for where he's at. But then I can also explain to them and teach my kids, hey, this is where this reaction is coming from. And they can see that I'm trying not to be reactionary, and it allows them to see what it looks like to be curious about your feelings as well, right? And
Did
then I
you
can have a conversation with my kids about why I need help, or why, like, when I ask them to do something, um, like I need them to take action and move on it. So yeah,
did you have that realization like in the moment, or was it post reflection, or was it a combo of the two?
it was definitely a combination of the two. But I will say, because I've had situations in the past where my 16-year-old has been like, "Whoa, mom, like what's happening here?" One of my favorite tricks in just life in general is to borrow somebody's voice, right? And sometimes it happens unintentionally. Like in a good way, you can choose to borrow someone's voice if you're not feeling great about yourself, but you have a big cheerleader. But in this way, I often hear my son, and in this moment, I heard my 16-year-old, yo, bro, what's going on with you? And like not in a bad way, but just in a way that made me say, hey, like my reaction is not really equal to what's actually happening here. So it's slipping into that curiosity. There's clearly something under the surface. This is not just about the dishes. What else is happening? And it's not always about overwhelm. It could be about, being bummed the weekend's over and having more responsibility during a week, or, whatever it is. But his voice is actually what gave me the ability to pause and be curious. So that I thought was funny when I was thinking about the show, that he would get a kick out of being, a tool in my toolbox.
We all need them. And, our kids are such a tool in all of our toolboxes. So I definitely get that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You've shared a couple. Do you have a story about where curiosity has maybe interrupted your emotional chaos at all? or given you distance?
You know, I have been an impulsive person, diagnosed ADHD at a very, very young age. I am impulsive in a lot of my decisions and a lot of my reactions. And I get very curious of what's going on with that impulsivity. I have moments where the back end was shame. So that's part of the reason why I probably asked, was this a real time or was this a post reflection? And so whenever I am impulsive and reactive, I frequently will go back to the drawing board with or without my coach. Generally, it's with my coach of like, what was I feeling in that moment? What could I do differently? And it's beautiful to do that personally, but it's even more amazing to do it with your clients, because then you kind of get to have that experience. You're speaking from experience. You're not speaking from a know it all perspective. I don't mean that at all like that, but that's the first thing that came to mind. But it kind of gives us that experience and to know that we all respond, whether or not there's shame or happiness or joy on the back end. We all respond, and then we can kind of use those questions and kind of wonder if that's how we really wanted to respond, or if we are going to change it going forward. So that mine, most of mine are post reflection, and again, pit in my stomach, sleeping. That was really my coach helped me kind of get to the backside of that to realize that's what I needed. So
I wonder too if like some of it is the bigger responses may have to be like a post afterwards, right? Like just the other day I was sitting in the yard and I had a like a I'll call it like a ping where like I could feel an emotion. It wasn't huge, but it was like, and my gut response was like, oh, that's interesting, right? But I'm guessing because it wasn't this big reaction, or maybe I've built enough emotional resilience that I could do it in real time as opposed to it being like after the fact. And even, yesterday when I was talking with with a partner about money, it it was based on the curiosity that I've cultivated over the last couple years that allowed me to have a conversation that was really more about curiosity than judgment of myself or shame about how I was feeling about money. And I'm wondering if you've noticed that too, like how does curiosity, I adore Sean Muzzy, another shout out. So I'm wondering if you have noticed that curiosity helps when it comes to relationships as well.
oh, definitely. There's no question about it. And I have to again take judgment out of it and really get curious of, why did I respond that way? Like that's not how I want to show up. I first of all have to acknowledge that's not how I want to show up, especially with Sean Muzzy. You have to say his full name. You really just can't say Sean because the
I
Muzzy part.
know. You do. You do.
I used to call him Sean Patrick as well. But anyway, that's not how I want to show up with him. So I think that being mindful and being curious are those keys to all of our relationships, whether it's our children, whether it's our best friend, whether it's someone in line at the grocery store, or our partner. I think those are really important aspects. And it keeps us from that throne of being right and more into that throne of what's deeper here. Because these, minus the one in the grocery store, these are all relationships that we do want to foster, and we want them to be as solid as they can be. So I think those
Yeah,
are.
I think curiosity is like the Swiss Army knife of emotional tools, right? Like it works in so many different situations, like whether it's with a kid, with a partner, or if it's with yourself, or based on very different feelings, whether it's shame or anger or judgment, right? Being curious in those situations is so helpful. You can pull it out of your pocket, use it for all these various things, um and like figure it out. And I really want to encourage our listeners, like this is your time to practice this, right? If you can think of an area in your life where you felt emotionally stuck, whether it's shame, anger, frustration, judgment, like this, after listening to this is your time to challenge yourself to approach that area with curiosity instead of resistance. And the next time that emotions flare up, like don't let it control you, but don't push it away either. Just ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? What's underneath it? Take that curiosity, pause, and remember that this whole thing is a process. Right? It's something that you've practiced. Wendy and I have both practiced this. So we'd love to know how this curiosity pause works for you. You can tag us, you can DM us. As always, you can always use the hashtag notes from your coach. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And any last remarks, Wendy, as we finish up our show today?
We're all very curious, amazing human beings. Go make magic in this world. I'm super excited for all of you. That's it.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here. And to all my listeners, as you step back into your human journey, remember this week's unfiltered motivation from this episode of Notes from Your Coach. And remember to pivot boldly and live fully. You've got this. And in case you need a reminder, you are a badass. Keep rocking it. Until next time, stay true, stay empowered, stay resilient, and remember the power of the pivots. If you would like to contact me, you can go to my website, notesfromyourcoach.com. All my info is on the contact page, and you can sign up for my monthly newsletter there. There's also a quiz on there to see if you're ready for a pivot and if you're ready to make a big change in your life. I want to thank you all for tuning in. I had a wonderful time with you today, Wendy. Please join me every first and third Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific time. Have a great week, and I will see you back next term. Always remember that you are your greatest asset. For more Notes from Your Coach with me, Queen of the Pivot, tune in every first and third Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio. Each episode is chock full of unfiltered motivation to ignite your life and focuses on the tiny nugget of potent truth to empower you to take action and understand the power of the pivot. Share this show and share your journey using hashtag Notes from Your Coach. Subscribe and leave a review by visiting notesfromyourcoach.com.
The views expressed on this program are those of the host, guests, and callers, and do not necessarily reflect the views of the station, its management, or advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.